Hey everyone. Before I tell you this story, drop a comment right now. Where are you watching from? Your city, your state, even your country. And tell me this, have you ever given something to someone when you couldn't really afford to? Because what I'm about to tell you is about a woman who gave everything she had to a man nobody else would even look at. And what she discovered changed everything. Okay, so this is Imani Brooks, 28 years old, living in Richmond, Virginia, barely surviving on two jobs that together didn't pay enough for her to make rent. She worked third shift as a janitor at County General Hospital, midnight to 6 a.m., mopping floors, cleaning bathrooms, emptying trash cans. The kind of job where you're invisible even when you're standing right in front of people. Then she'd take the number 12 bus across town and work another shift, stocking shelves at Save Mart until 2 in the afternoon. After that, she'd go home to her studio apartment, and I mean studio in the most literal sense. The whole thing was maybe 300 square feet. Her bed was her couch, was her dining table. She had one window that looked out at a brick wall. The rent was $950 a month, and she was always behind. But here's the thing about Imani. Every single morning when that bus dropped her off at 6:08 a.m. at the corner of Fillmore and 3rd, she didn't walk the 4 blocks north to her apartment. She turned left, toward the closed pharmacy, toward the man everyone pretended not to see. His name was Elias Ward. He sat with his back against the metal security gate of that pharmacy every morning, wearing an old military surplus jacket with the name tape torn off, white beard neatly trimmed, hair cut military short, like his hands wouldn't let him grow it long even if he wanted to. He had these pale blue eyes that seemed like they'd seen things he'd decided not to talk about. Most people walked past him like he was furniture. But Imani stopped, and she'd set down a brown paper bag. Inside was supposed to be her lunch: half a sandwich, usually peanut butter because that's what she could afford, an apple if she'd gotten the employee discount, a small bottle of water. That was it. That was all she had. The first morning she did it, Elias just stared at the bag like he didn't understand what was happening. Then he looked up at her with those blue eyes and said, "Appreciate you, miss." His voice was rough but measured, controlled, like a man who still believed in protocol even when the world had stopped following it. Imani didn't say anything. She just walked away before she could change her mind about food she couldn't afford to give away. But she came back the next morning, and the next, and the next. By the second week, it became routine. Monday, half a turkey sandwich, an orange, water. Tuesday, granola bar, crackers, apple juice. Wednesday, leftover rice and beans in a container she never asked for back because, honestly, she knew she wasn't getting it back. One morning, a delivery truck double parked near the pharmacy, and the driver shouted at Elias to move. "Come on, Ward, I got a schedule." That's how Imani learned his name, Elias Ward. The following Monday, she tried it out. "Morning, Mr. Ward." He looked at her for a long moment, then he smiled, barely. "Elias is fine, Miss Brooks." She froze. "How do you know my—" He pointed at her hospital badge, still clipped to her scrub pocket. "You're careful, but not that careful." It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt like being seen for the first time in months. In this city where she was invisible, just another black woman in faded scrubs cleaning up other people's messes, Elias Ward actually saw her. And he started talking. Not a lot. Elias wasn't much of a talker, but when he did say something, it was strange. He'd point at planes flying overhead. C-130, turboprop, 4-engine, probably headed to the reserve base upstate. "You know planes?" Imani asked once. "Used to fly them." She waited for him to laugh, to admit he was joking. He didn't. "What kind?" "The kind that don't officially exist." That became the pattern. Elias would mention things in passing, things that seemed impossible for a homeless man to know. Navigation coordinates, fuel burn rates, the phonetic alphabet used so casually it didn't sound memorized. It sounded like a first language. One morning, the news was playing through a storefront TV, footage of a sandstorm in the Middle East. Elias watched it with this expression Imani couldn't read. Flew through one of those in '03, he said quietly. Visibility dropped to 0 in 30 seconds. Had to navigate by instruments alone. Brought back 6 people who weren't supposed to be there in the first place. Imani wanted to ask what he meant, but something in his voice told her he wouldn't, or couldn't explain. Most people thought he was confused, delusional, just another veteran lost in his own head, making up stories to feel important. The guys at the corner store would laugh about it. Crazy Ward's talking about his secret missions again. But Imani didn't think he was lying. There was something about the way he said things, specific, precise, like he was pulling from memory, not imagination. Still, she had her own problems. The eviction notice came in week 6. Final notice. Rent past due. Amount owed, $1,847. Pay by Friday or vacate premises. She sat on her apartment floor and did the math she already knew didn't work. Hospital job, $500 every 2 weeks after taxes. Grocery store, $320 every 2 weeks. Rent, $950 a month. Utilities, $110. Food, $200 if she was lucky. Bus pass, $75. The math never worked. She'd been surviving on overdraft fees and payday loans for months. And still, she made the sandwich. Because Elias Ward was hungrier than she was, and nobody else was going to feed him. By week 7, Elias noticed. Of course he did. One morning, he opened the bag, took out the sandwich, and broke it in half. He handed one piece back to Imani. "You're losing weight," he said. She tried to laugh it off. "I'm fine." "No," Elias said gently. "You're generous. There's a difference." The kindness in his voice nearly broke her. "I can't take your food," she said. "It's not my food. It's yours. You just let me borrow it for a while." He pressed the half sandwich into her hand. His fingers were rough, calloused, but warm. "Your body needs fuel too. You can't help anyone if you collapse." It was the most he'd ever said at once, and it was so obvious he'd had training, medical training, survival training, something, because he was right. She'd been skipping meals for weeks, and her hands had started shaking during her shifts. They ate together that morning, sitting on the curb in the early light. Neither of them talking, just 2 people who had nothing, sharing what little they had. "Can I ask you something?" Imani said finally. "You can ask, can't promise I'll answer. Those stories you tell, about flying, about missions, are they true?" Elias was quiet for a long time. Then, "Depends on who's asking. To most people, they're just the ramblings of a man who lost his mind somewhere along the way. To you?" He looked at her directly. "Yeah, they're true." "Then, how did you end up here?" "That," Elias said, "is a longer story, and one I'm not sure I should tell." "Why not?" "Because telling it might put you in danger." Imani laughed, actually laughed. "I'm a broke Black woman living paycheck to paycheck in America. I'm already in danger. What's one more thing?" But Elias didn't smile. "This is different. The people I used to work for, they don't like loose ends, and I am a very loose end." That was when Imani started paying attention to the details, like how every time a police car drove by, Elias's whole body tensed, how he positioned himself so he could always see both ends of the street, how he never fell asleep, not really, just kind of dozed with his eyes half open. One morning, that same police cruiser from before pulled up again. The older officer, Imani had learned his name was Donnelly, got out this time. He walked over slowly, one hand near his belt. "Ward," he said, not a greeting, an acknowledgement. Officer, Elias replied, equally flat. You doing okay? Managing. Donnelly's eyes flicked to Imani, then back to Elias. You know, there are shelters, resources. You don't have to live like this. Shelters require paperwork. Paperwork requires me to exist, and according to the government, I don't. Donnelly's jaw tightened. That's not... He stopped, started again. I can't help you if you won't let me. Wasn't asking for help, officer. The two men stared at each other. There was history there. Imani could feel it. Something unspoken, something heavy. Finally, Donnelly walked back to his car. But before he got in, he said, You should know, people have been asking about you. Different people than usual. Federal types. Elias's expression didn't change, but Imani saw his hand clench. Appreciate the heads up. After the cop left, Imani asked, Who's looking for you? People who'd prefer I stayed invisible. Why? Because I know things. Things that could embarrass important people if they got out. What kind of things? Elias smiled, but there was no humor in it. The kind that could get us both killed if I told you. Imani should have walked away right then. Should have stopped bringing food, stopped asking questions, stopped caring about a man who was clearly involved in something dangerous. But she didn't. Because here's what she'd figured out about Elias Ward. He was the most honest person she'd ever met. In a world where everyone lied, employers who promised hours they didn't give, landlords who raised rent without warning, politicians who swore they cared about people like her, Elias told the truth, even when the truth was dangerous, even when it cost him everything. So she kept coming back. Week 8, she brought him a pair of socks she'd bought with her employee discount. Week 9, a hat because it was getting cold. Week 10, a blanket she'd taken from the hospital's donation bin. You're going to get in trouble for that, Elias said, touching the blanket. Then I'll get in trouble. Why? It was the question he'd never asked before. Why do you do this? She thought about it, about all the people who'd walked past her at that hospital like she was invisible, about the managers who never learned her name, about the system that ground people down and told them they didn't matter. Because somebody should, she said finally. Because you matter. Because we all matter, even when the world tells us we don't. Elias's eyes got shiny, and he looked away quickly. When he looked back, his voice was rough. You're a good person, Imani Brooks, better than I deserve. Everyone deserves kindness, Elias. Not everyone. The way he said it, like he'd done something he couldn't forgive himself for, made Imani's chest ache. But before she could ask what he meant, he changed the subject. Started telling her about flying at night, using stars to navigate, the way the world looked from 30,000 feet when everything below was just pinpricks of light in the dark. And Imani listened, because that's what you do for people who matter. You see them, you listen to them, you show up, even when it costs you everything you can't afford to give. It happened on a Tuesday. Week 14, early morning, just after 6. Imani got off the bus like always, brown bag in hand. The street was quiet, that in-between time when night shift workers are heading home and day shift people haven't woken up yet. She turned the corner toward the pharmacy. Elias wasn't sitting. He was lying on the sidewalk, his body curled on its side, barely moving. Imani dropped the bag and ran. Elias! Elias, can you hear me? His eyes opened, barely, unfocused. His breathing was shallow, rapid. His skin had a gray tint that made Imani's nursing instincts kick in, even though she was just a janitor. I'm calling 911, she said, pulling out her phone. His hand shot out, grabbed her wrist, stronger than she expected. No, he gasped. No hospitals. You need help, not hospitals. Each word was an effort. They'll find me. Who will find you? But he couldn't answer. His eyes rolled back and his grip went slack. Imani called 911 anyway. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes. The EMTs loaded Elias onto a stretcher while one of them rattled off questions Imani couldn't answer. Name? Elias Ward. Age? She guessed early 60s. Medical history? I don't know. I bring him food, that's all. They took him to County General, the same hospital where Imani worked. She followed in a taxi she couldn't afford, using her emergency credit card that was already maxed out. By the time she got there, they'd already taken him back to the ER. She wasn't family, wasn't listed as emergency contact, so they wouldn't tell her anything. She waited in the ER lobby for 4 hours, missed her shift at the grocery store, didn't care. Finally, Dr. Marcus Chen came out. He recognized her from the night shift. "You're Imani, right? You work here?" "Janitorial, yeah. Is he okay?" Dr. Chen's expression was careful, professional. "We've stabilized him. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, pneumonia. His lungs are in bad shape. He's asking for you." Relief flooded through her. "Can I see him?" "5 minutes. He needs rest." They'd put Elias in a room at the end of the hall. He looked so small in that hospital bed, hooked up to IVs and monitors. His eyes opened when she walked in. "Told you, no hospitals," he whispered. "You collapsed. What was I supposed to do?" "Let me go." He said it so simply, like it was obvious. "No, Imani, no. I didn't spend 7 months keeping you alive for you to give up now." He almost smiled. "Stubborn." "Damn right." He was quiet for a moment, just the beeping of monitors filling the space. Then, "They're going to come. The people looking for me. Hospital records are easy to access. Then we'll deal with it. You don't understand. These aren't regular people. They're—" He started coughing, a deep, rattling sound that made the monitors spike. A nurse came in. "He needs rest. You should go." Imani didn't want to leave, but Elias squeezed her hand. "Go. I'll still be here." She left the hospital and went home, finally, to her apartment, sat on her bed and realized she was shaking, not just from exhaustion, from fear, because Elias's fear was real. Whatever he was running from, whatever he knew, it was bad enough that he'd rather die on a sidewalk than risk being found in a hospital. She should have minded her own business, should have stayed out of it, but she was never good at that. So instead, she did something probably stupid. She went through the bag she'd been carrying, the one she'd dropped on the sidewalk. The sandwich was ruined, crushed, but there was something else, something she hadn't put in there. An envelope, small, yellow, worn soft at the edges. It must have fallen out of Elias's jacket when the EMTs moved him. Imani opened it. Inside was a folded piece of paper, old and creased. On it, written with careful handwriting, "If you're reading this, I'm either dead or detained. This is not paranoia. This is survival. Below are the names of 3 people who can verify my service. Contact them only if absolutely necessary. Trust no one else. Destroy after reading." Below that were 3 names, phone numbers, and what looked like service numbers. 1, General Rebecca Vance, Pentagon, 703-555-0147, service verification, Echo 7 Delta. 2, Colonel James Mitchell, retired, 540-555-0893, Operation Clearwater. 3, Daniel Morrison, 916-555-3412, Program Blackbird. At the bottom, one more line, "I'm sorry for the burden of knowing." Imani stared at those names, at that Pentagon phone number. This was real. All of it was real. Elias hadn't been delusional, he'd been telling the truth, and now she held evidence that could prove it. The question was, what was she supposed to do with it? She thought about destroying the paper like Elias had instructed, but something stopped her. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was the fact that a man who'd served his country was dying alone and forgotten. Maybe it was just anger at a system that had erased him so completely. Whatever it was, Imani made a decision. She took photos of the paper with her phone, uploaded them to a cloud service, then tucked the original back in the envelope and hid it in her apartment. If they came looking for Elias, if something happened to him, she wanted proof that he existed, that he mattered, that he was more than just a homeless man everyone ignored. She went to sleep that night with her phone on the pillow beside her, halfway expecting it to ring, expecting someone to tell her Elias was gone. But the call that came 3 hours later was worse. "Miss Brooks, this is County General Hospital. We need you to come back. There's been an incident." Imani threw on clothes and ran the 4 blocks to the hospital. The sun wasn't even up yet. The streets were empty except for a few early delivery trucks and 3 black SUVs parked in the emergency bay. Not ambulances, SUVs, expensive ones with government plates. Her stomach dropped. She went through the ER entrance. The waiting room was empty except for 2 men in dark suits standing near the admissions desk. They turned when she walked in, and one of them stepped forward. "Miss Imani Brooks?" "Who's asking?" He pulled out a badge. "Special Agent Marcus Webb, Federal Protective Service. We need to talk to you about Elias Ward." "Is he okay?" "He's being transferred to a federal medical facility." "What? You can't just—" "Actually, we can. Mr. Ward is a person of interest in an ongoing investigation. For his safety and yours, he's being moved to a secure location." "Investigation into what?" "That's classified." Imani felt rage building in her chest. "He's homeless. He's sick. He almost died on the street this morning. What investigation?" The second agent spoke up. "Miss Brooks, you need to understand, Elias Ward is not who you think he is." "Then who is he?" The agents looked at each other. Finally, Webb said, "We can't discuss this here, but someone wants to speak with you. Someone who can answer your questions." "Who?" "She's waiting in the conference room, if you'll come with us." Every instinct told Imani to refuse, to walk away, but she thought about Elias lying in that hospital bed, asking for her. She thought about 7 months of mornings, of shared sandwiches, of stories nobody believed. She followed them. The conference room was on the 3rd floor, usually reserved for hospital administration meetings. Inside, a woman in an Air Force dress uniform sat at the head of the table, stars on her shoulders, 3 of them, a general. She stood when Imani walked in. "Miss Brooks, thank you for coming. I'm General Rebecca Vance." The name from Elias's list. "Where's Elias?" demanded Imani. "He's safe, being treated by military physicians. He's in good hands." "That's not what I asked." General Vance's expression softened slightly. "No, it's not. Please sit." Imani stayed standing. "Tell me what's going on. Tell me who he is. Tell me why you people are just showing up now after he's been homeless for God knows how long." "It's complicated." "Then uncomplicated." The general studied her for a long moment. Then she opened a leather portfolio on the table. "What I'm about to tell you is classified. By speaking with you, I'm violating about a dozen regulations. But given what you've done for Captain Ward, I think you've earned the truth." "Captain?" "Captain Elias James Ward, United States Air Force, retired officially." General Vance pulled out a photograph and slid it across the table. A younger Elias in a flight suit, standing in front of an aircraft with no markings, no insignia, no numbers, just flat gray paint and an ominous silhouette. From 1998 to 2009, Captain Ward flew 63 classified extraction missions. He specialized in high-risk insertions into denied territory, places we weren't supposed to be, places where if something went wrong, the U.S. government would deny any involvement. Imani picked up the photo with shaking hands. That was Elias, younger, stronger, but the same eyes, the same careful expression. He brought back diplomats from collapsing governments, journalists from war zones, intelligence assets from hostile territory. He saved 41 lives over 11 years, people who would have died if he hadn't flown to hell to get them. Then why was he homeless? Imani broke. Why was he on a street corner in Richmond eating my lunch? General Vance's face hardened. In 2010, Captain Ward was diagnosed with PTSD, severe, the kind that comes from flying into combat zones over and over, knowing that if you go down, no one's coming for you. His treatment required him to disclose details of missions that were still classified above top secret. And the system chose secrecy over his well-being. The words hung in the air like an accusation. His treatment was suspended pending security review. The review was never completed. His medical records were sealed. His housing assistance was denied. And because his service was classified, because officially he'd never flown those missions, never saved those people, he couldn't prove he'd ever served. "You abandoned him," Imani said. It wasn't a question. Yes, we did. The general's honesty was somehow worse than a lie would have been. His benefits were cut off. He was discharged with a general discharge, not honorable, not dishonorable, just general, which meant he qualified for nothing. And when he tried to get help, tried to tell people what he'd done, they thought he was delusional, making up stories. So he became invisible. Yes. Imani felt tears burning behind her eyes. 7 months. She'd known him for 7 months, but he'd been out there for 13 years. 13 years living on streets, forgotten by the country he'd risked his life for, erased by the system he'd served. "Why now?" Imani asked. "Why are you here now?" General Vance pulled out another document. "Because 3 days ago you mailed something." Imani froze. "What?" "An envelope to my office in the Pentagon. It contained a handwritten note asking for help for a homeless veteran named Elias Ward. The note triggered an automatic review. We found him 3 days before he collapsed." "I never—" Then Imani remembered. The envelope that had fallen out of Elias's jacket. She'd taken photos of it, but she'd put the original back in her apartment. "It wasn't me," she said. "Then who?" And Imani realized Elias had mailed it himself the morning before he collapsed. He knew he was dying, and he tried to protect her by making it look like she'd reached out for help. "He did it," she whispered. "He knew you'd come. He was trying to make sure I didn't get blamed for whatever happens next." General Vance nodded slowly. "That sounds like Captain Ward, always trying to protect his people, even when it cost him everything." General Vance pulled out more files, photographs, mission reports, medical evaluations. "These are classified," she said. "You shouldn't see them, but Captain Ward listed you as his next of kin when we processed him, and that gives you certain rights." Imani looked at the papers spread across the table, decades of service condensed into forms and photographs. "He has no family?" she asked. "His parents died 20 years ago. No siblings, never married, never had children. The military was his family, until we decided he wasn't worth the inconvenience." There was bitterness in the general's voice, real bitterness. "You knew him," Imani said, "personally." "I was a captain when Elias was a lieutenant. We served together for 3 years. He saved my life in 2004. We were extracting a CIA asset from Beirut, and the mission went sideways. Enemy fire took out our primary aircraft. Elias flew in under radar, picked us up while we were taking heavy fire, and got us out. He had shrapnel in his shoulder and a bullet hole in his arm, but he didn't land until we were safe." The general touched one of the photographs, a group shot of pilots in flight suits. "He was the best I've ever seen. Cool under pressure, brilliant tactician, and decent. In a profession where ruthlessness was often rewarded, Elias stayed decent. He'd risk everything for his crew. He'd never leave anyone behind." "But you left him behind." Not me personally, but yes, the system did. When he needed us most, we weren't there. Why are you telling me this? General Vance closed the portfolio. Because Captain Ward is dying. His lungs are damaged beyond repair. Combination of pneumonia, exposure, and untreated infections. The doctors give him 3, maybe 4 months, and he knows it. The words hit Imani like a punch. No, they can treat him. He refused aggressive treatment. Said he'd lived long enough. Said he was tired. Imani stood up so fast her chair fell backward. Take me to him, right now. He doesn't want to see you. I don't care what he wants. Take me to him. The general studied her. He's trying to protect you. If you walk away now, this ends here. You go back to your life, you forget about classified operations and government conspiracies. You stay safe. I've never been safe, Imani shot back. I'm a black woman working 2 jobs in America, living in poverty, 1 paycheck from homelessness. The system was already trying to kill me slowly. At least Elias treated me like a person. He cares about you. That's why he's pushing you away. Then he should know by now that I don't push easily. Something like respect flickered across the general's face. No, I suspect you don't. She stood. Come on, but I'm warning you, he won't be happy about this. They walked through corridors Imani had cleaned hundreds of times, past rooms she'd mopped, bathrooms she'd scrubbed. Now she was being escorted by a 3-star general like she mattered. It was surreal. They took an elevator to a floor Imani didn't have clearance for. 2 more agents stood outside a door at the end of the hall. Inside, Elias lay in a bed much nicer than the ER one. Private room, real windows, medical equipment that looked expensive. He turned his head when they walked in. No, he said immediately. She shouldn't be here. She has a right to be, Imani said. She has a right to a normal life, away from all this. Too late, Imani said, walking to his bedside. I'm already involved, and you don't get to make decisions about my life. I'm trying to protect you. By lying to me? By pushing me away? That's not protection, Elias. That's cowardice. He flinched like she'd hit him. I am a coward. I let you take care of me for months when I should have told you to run. I let you give me food you couldn't afford. I let you care about a man who's already dead. You're not dead yet. Close enough. The monitor beeped steadily between them. Imani reached out and took his hand. 7 months, she said. 7 months, you were the only person who saw me, really saw me. Everyone at that hospital walks past me like I'm invisible. My landlord treats me like a problem. The managers at the grocery store don't know my name. But you saw me. You called me by name. You shared your food even when you were hungrier than I was. Tears were running down her face now. So don't you dare tell me I should walk away. Don't you dare act like you didn't matter. Because you do, Elias. You matter to me. His eyes were wet too. He gripped her hand. You're a good person, Imani. Better than this world deserves. So are you. No, I'm a man who followed orders and didn't ask enough questions. A man who abandoned people because it was easier than fighting. A man who let himself become invisible because I was too tired to demand to be seen. Then let me see you now, Imani said. Let me know who you really are. All of it. The missions, the service, the things you did. Don't die without someone knowing the truth. Elias looked at General Vance. I need the room. Captain? That's an order, General. Vance's mouth twitched, almost a smile. You haven't been able to give me orders in 15 years. Old habits. She left, taking the agents with her. The door clicked shut. Elias took a shaky breath. What I'm about to tell you, it's treason, technically, revealing classified information to an unauthorized civilian. If they wanted, they could prosecute you just for listening. Then they can try. Tell me. So he did. He told her about flying into Baghdad in '03 with no lights, no escort, no backup, about landing in a firefight to extract an ambassador and his family, about the way the aircraft shook when rockets passed close enough to feel the heat. He told her about Bosnia, Kosovo, Somalia, Yemen, about places that weren't officially war zones but looked like hell anyway, about making impossible decisions at 30,000 feet, who to save when you couldn't save everyone. He told her about the nightmares, the faces of people he couldn't rescue, the weight of carrying 41 lives saved against the unknown number he'd failed. And he told her about the betrayal, about coming home broken and being told his service didn't count, about filling out forms for benefits only to be told the missions he'd flown never happened, about watching his life fall apart while the people he'd risked everything for moved on without him. I served for 20 years, he said, gave everything, and when I needed help, they erased me, made me invisible. So I stayed invisible, seemed easier than fighting a system designed to forget people like me. Until you met me. Until you met me, he corrected. I wasn't looking to be saved, Imani. I'd made peace with dying on that corner. But then you showed up every morning with your paper bags and your kindness and your stubborn refusal to let me disappear. And I started to remember what it felt like to matter. He squeezed her hand. That's your gift. You make people feel seen, feel human, and I'm grateful for it, even if it means you got tangled up in this mess. It's not a mess, Imani said. It's the truth, and the truth deserves to be told. What are you going to do? She'd been asking herself that question since she'd seen those names on Elias's list. Now, looking at him in that hospital bed, she knew. I'm going to make sure people know who you are, what you did. I'm going to make sure the system that erased you gets exposed. And I'm going to fight for every other veteran who got thrown away like trash. That's a big fight. I know, but I'm good at fighting. Had to be growing up how I did. Elias smiled, really smiled, for the first time since she'd met him. You're going to be amazing. I wish I could see it. You will. You're not dying for at least 3 months. That's enough time. Enough time for what? To start a revolution. The next morning, Imani went to work. Third shift at the hospital, just like always. But everything felt different now. The hallways she'd cleaned 1,000 times, hallways where generals walked and secrets were kept. The rooms she'd mopped, rooms where heroes died forgotten. She finished her shift and went straight to the hospital administration office, asked to speak to the director. The secretary looked at her like she was crazy. The director doesn't see janitorial staff without an appointment. Then I'll wait. Miss, I don't think you understand. No, you don't understand. I have information about a veteran who was left to die on the street. A veteran who your hospital treated like a John Doe, even though he saved 41 American lives. And I'm not leaving until someone with power hears about it. The secretary's expression changed. Wait here. 20 minutes later, Imani was sitting across from Dr. Patricia Chen, the hospital's executive director. She'd brought General Vance with her. The general had given Imani her direct number and told her to call if she needed anything. This is highly irregular, Dr. Chen said. So is abandoning veterans, Imani replied. They spent 2 hours going through Elias's case. The general provided declassified documentation proving his service. Imani explained how he'd been living on the street for years, coming to this hospital's ER at least a dozen times and being turned away every time because he couldn't prove eligibility for VA benefits. We're not equipped to verify military service, Dr. Chen said. Then get equipped, Imani shot back. You're a county hospital. You take government money, which means you have an obligation to government employees, past and present, including the ones who served in secret. That's not how the system, then change the system. General Vance leaned forward. Miss Brooks is right. There are likely hundreds of veterans in this situation, men and women who served in classified roles and can't prove their service through normal channels. They fall through the cracks. This hospital has an opportunity to be the first to fix that. By doing what? Dr. Chen said. By creating a protocol, General Vance said, a way for veterans with classified service to get verification without compromising security. I can provide a Pentagon liaison. We can set up a system where someone like Captain Ward can come in, provide certain coded information, and have their service confirmed within 24 hours. Dr. Chen looked between them. This would require funding, training, policy changes. Then let's start, Imani said, because next time there might not be someone like me to speak up. Next time the veteran might just die alone, and that's not acceptable. Dr. Chen was silent for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone. Get me the county board. Tell them we need an emergency meeting. That was the beginning. Over the next week, Imani became something she'd never expected, an advocate. With General Vance's backing, she started reaching out to veteran organizations, local news stations, social media influencers who covered military issues. She told Elias's story, with his permission. She posted photos of him from his service days, next to photos of him on that street corner. The contrast was devastating. The post went viral. Within 48 hours, it had been shared over 100,000 times. News crews showed up at the hospital. Reporters wanted interviews. Politicians suddenly cared. Senator Claire Hutchinson, who chaired the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, called personally. Ms. Brooks, I'd like to invite you to testify before Congress. About what? About systemic failures in how we treat veterans of classified programs. Your friend, Captain Ward, isn't the only one. We've been getting reports for years, but without concrete examples, it's been hard to push for change. You've given us that example. I'll do it, but only if Elias can testify too. He's quite ill, from what I understand. Then we'll bring the hearing to him, because his voice matters more than mine. A week later, that's exactly what happened. They set up a committee hearing in a room at the military medical facility where Elias was being treated. 5 senators, a dozen staffers, cameras, and reporters. It was surreal. Imani testified first. She talked about meeting Elias, about 7 months of shared meals, about a man who served his country with honor and been repaid with abandonment. We call them heroes when we need them, she said, looking directly at the camera. We give them medals and thank yous and patriotic slogans. But when they come home broken, when they need help, we call them problems. We call them crazy. We erase them. Then it was Elias's turn. He was in a wheelchair now, oxygen tubes in his nose, but he sat up straight, military posture, even at the end. Senators, he said, his voice raspy but clear, I don't want pity. I don't want apologies. I want accountability. I want a system that actually takes care of the people who risk everything for this country, not just the ones with public service records. All of us. Senator Hutchinson leaned forward. What would that system look like, Captain Ward? It would look like someone checking on veterans who disappear. It would look like medical care that doesn't require 12 forms and 6 months of waiting. It would look like believing people when they say they served, even if their service was classified. It would look like basic human dignity. He paused to catch his breath. And it would look like more people like Imani Brooks, people who see other people who give a damn even when it costs them, because that's what this country should be about, not secrets and bureaucracy and letting people die on street corners, but actually taking care of each other. The room was silent when he finished. Then one of the senators started clapping, then another, then all of them. It wasn't enough, Imani knew. Application didn't create policy. Good intentions didn't fix systems. But it was a start. That night, back in Elias's room, he gripped her hand. You did good today. We did good. No, this was you. I just showed up and told the truth. You're the one who made them listen. Someone had to. I'm glad it was you. His eyes were heavy. The testimony had exhausted him. Promise me something. Don't stop. Even after I'm gone, don't let them forget. Don't let other veterans become invisible. I promise. Good. Then I can rest. He fell asleep holding her hand, and Imani stayed there, watching him breathe, making plans to keep a promise she intended to die keeping. The story exploded. Within 3 days of the congressional hearing, Elias's case was national news. Every major network covered it. The hashtag #RememberElias trended on Twitter for 48 hours straight. Veterans groups rallied, celebrities shared the story, politicians who'd never spoken about veteran issues suddenly had strong opinions. But Imani knew something they didn't. Elias was dying faster than anyone expected. The doctors had given him 3 months. He'd lasted 5 weeks since his collapse. His lungs were failing, his body was shutting down. He slept most of the day now, waking for short periods to eat a little, talk a little, then drift back into medicated sleep. But he was still fighting, still trying to make his last days count. One afternoon, he woke up more alert than usual. "Did you hear?" "Hear what?" "The bill. They're calling it the Ward Act, the Elias Ward Veterans Visibility Act." Imani grabbed her phone, pulled up the news. There it was, breaking news across every site. A bipartisan bill introduced in both the House and Senate designed to fix the exact problems Elias had faced. Requirements included a dedicated VA office for classified service verification, expedited benefits for veterans of covert operations, mandatory annual reviews of denied claims, protection from retaliation for seeking mental health treatment. "It's moving fast," Imani said, reading through the details. "They're saying it could pass within weeks." "Because they're embarrassed," Elias said, but he was smiling. "Nothing motivates politicians like public shame, but I'll take it, whatever works." "You're going to see this pass. You're going to be here when it becomes law." He squeezed your hand. "Maybe, but even if I'm not, it's happening. That's what matters. Other guys like me won't have to go through this. That's worth it." "You're worth it too." "I know. You made me sure I knew that." His eyes were getting heavy again. "You gave me something, Imani. These last few months, they reminded me what it felt like to be human, to be seen. I'd forgotten, but you showed me." Tears ran down Imani's face. "Don't talk like you're already gone." "I'm not gone yet, but I'm close. And that's okay. I'm not afraid anymore." "Of dying?" "Of being forgotten. That was always the real fear. Not death, erasure, disappearing without anyone knowing I'd existed. But now?" He gestured at the TV where CNN was running a story about the Ward Act. "Now people know. Now it means something. Because of you." They sat in silence, just existing together. Outside, the world was changing. Slowly, painfully, but changing. And in this quiet room, a man who'd saved 41 lives was finally being seen. The next week brought more developments. Daniel Morrison, one of the names from Elias's list, came forward. He'd served with Elias in the same program. He testified before Congress, providing additional evidence of how the system had failed classified service veterans. "There are dozens of us," he said, "maybe hundreds, men and women who served in secret and were abandoned in secret. Elias is just the one who got lucky enough to meet someone who cared." More veterans started coming forward. A pilot in Seattle who'd been homeless for 8 years, a navigator in Chicago who'd been denied benefits for a decade, a crew chief in Miami who'd been told her service didn't count because the missions were classified. Each one had a story like Elias's. Each one had been erased. But now they were being seen. Imani coordinated with General Vance to create a network, a way for these veterans to connect with each other, to share resources, to get help. They called it the Ward Network, and within 2 weeks, it had over 200 members. "You're building something real," General Vance told her over coffee one morning, "something that's going to outlast all of us." It's what Elias would want. It's more than that. You're changing how the system works. You're creating accountability where there wasn't any before. Imani stirred her coffee. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How do you live with it, knowing you were part of the system that did this to him?" The general was quiet for a long moment. "I don't, really. I tell myself I was following orders, that I didn't have the power to change things, that I was just one person in a massive bureaucracy. But the truth is, I saw what was happening and I didn't fight hard enough to stop it. So, what changed? You did. Watching you, a woman with no power, no money, no connections, take on the entire Department of Defense because it was the right thing to do, that showed me what real courage looks like. I've led men into combat. I've made life and death decisions. But you showed more bravery bringing sandwiches to a homeless man than I've shown in 30 years of service. I just did what anyone should do. But most people don't. That's the problem. Most people look away. You didn't. Back at the hospital, Elias's condition worsened. The doctor said it was a matter of days now, not weeks. His family, the one he'd built in his final weeks, gathered around him. General Vance came, Daniel Morrison flew in from Sacramento, other veterans from the ward network sent messages, flowers, letters. The room was filled with evidence that Elias Ward mattered, that he'd never been invisible at all. He'd just been surrounded by people who weren't looking until one woman decided to see him and changed everything. On a Tuesday morning, exactly 3 months after Elias had collapsed on that corner, Imani sat beside his bed holding his hand. He'd been unconscious for most of the past 24 hours. The monitors beeped steadily. His breathing was shallow, labored despite the oxygen. The doctors said he wouldn't wake up again, but they were wrong. Around noon, his eyes fluttered open, clear, focused, more alert than he'd been in days. "Hey," Imani said softly, "you're back." For a little while, his voice was barely a whisper. "Did it pass?" "The bill? They're voting today, both houses simultaneously. It's going to pass, Elias. They have the votes." He smiled, actually smiled. "Good. That's good. You did this. You changed everything." "No, you did. I was just the story. You were the one who told it." "We did it together." "Together," he agreed. Then, "I need to tell you something while I can still talk." "Okay." "That first morning when you brought me food, do you remember what you said?" Imani thought back. "I said, 'Morning, sir.'" "No, after that. When I thanked you, you said, 'Everyone deserves kindness,' just like that. Simple, like it was the most obvious thing in the world." "I remember." That changed me, because I'd spent 13 years believing I didn't deserve anything, believing I'd used up all my chances, all my worth. And then this woman, this broke, exhausted woman who was barely surviving herself, she gave me food she couldn't afford and told me I deserved kindness. Tears ran down his weathered face. That moment, that's when I started fighting again, started wanting to live instead of just waiting to die. Because if you could see me as deserving, maybe I was. Imani was crying too. "You always were deserving, Elias. Always. I know that now, because of you." He took a shaky breath. "I want you to promise me something else. Anything. Keep doing what you did for me. Not just for veterans, for everyone the world tries to erase. The homeless, the poor, the people society decides don't matter. See them. Show them they deserve kindness. Build a world where what you did for me isn't extraordinary. It's normal. I promise. And Imani, don't let them make me into a saint. Don't let them forget that I failed for 13 years before I tried to do the right thing. Real change doesn't come from perfect heroes. It comes from broken people who decide to try anyway. I'll remember." "Good." His grip on her hand weakened. "I'm tired now." "I know. Thank you for everything, for seeing me, for fighting for me, for making my last months mean something. Thank you for letting me, for trusting me, for being you." He smiled one last time. Not a bad ending, is it? For a guy who almost died alone on a sidewalk? Not bad at all. His eyes closed. The monitors continued their steady rhythm. Imani sat there holding his hand, watching him breathe. At 3:47 p.m., while C-SPAN played on the TV, showing the House voting on the Elias Ward Veterans Visibility Act, Captain Elias James Ward's heart stopped. The bill passed 347 to 78. He never knew, but somehow, Imani thought, maybe he did. The funeral was held at Arlington National Cemetery. Full military honors. The Secretary of Defense attended, members of Congress, generals and admirals, veterans from every branch of service. But the person who spoke at his service wasn't military. It was Imani. She stood at the podium in a dress someone had bought for her. She still couldn't afford one herself, and looked out at the crowd of hundreds. I met Elias Ward on a street corner in Richmond. He was homeless, I was broke. Neither of us had anything to give, but we gave anyway. She talked about those 7 months, about shared sandwiches and morning conversations, about a man who'd served his country with honor and been repaid with abandonment. Everyone here today is honoring a hero, and Elias was a hero, but he was also just a person who made mistakes, who struggled, who was forgotten by the system he'd served. And that's the part we can't forget. Because there are thousands of people like Elias out there right now, veterans and non-veterans, people who've been erased by systems that don't care, people who are invisible, and they're waiting for someone to see them. Elias used to tell me stories about his missions, about saving people from impossible situations. He'd fly into war zones in the middle of the night, land in places he wasn't supposed to be, and bring people home. That's what he did for 20 years. But in those last few months, he taught me something else. He taught me that sometimes the most important rescue isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's just showing up, bringing food, saying someone's name, treating them like they matter. Because they do matter. Every single person matters. And if we want to honor Elias Ward, really honor him, we need to remember that. We need to see the invisible people. We need to fight for the forgotten ones. We need to build a world where what I did, bringing breakfast to a homeless man, isn't newsworthy. It's just normal. She looked at the flag-draped coffin. Elias, you told me not to let them make me into a saint, so I won't. You were complicated. You were broken. You were human. And you were my friend. Thank you for teaching me what courage looks like. Thank you for fighting even when you were tired. Thank you for showing me that one person can make a difference. Rest well, Captain. You've earned it. The honor guard folded the flag, presented it to Imani as her next of kin, her chosen family. She held it against her chest and felt the weight of everything it represented. The sacrifices made, the promises broken, the system that had failed him, and the change that was finally coming. Because the Elias Ward Veterans Visibility Act had been signed into law the day before. The president had used Elias's own flight pen for the signing, a pen General Vance had recovered from his personal effects. It was the beginning of something new, a system that would look for veterans instead of erasing them, that would believe them instead of dismissing them, that would honor their service, even when that service was classified. It wasn't perfect, it wouldn't fix everything overnight, but it was a start. And it existed because one woman had refused to look away. 6 months after Elias's death, Imani stood outside a new building in downtown Richmond. The sign above the door read, "The Ward House, Support Services for Veterans." It had been funded by a combination of government grants, private donations, and money from a GoFundMe that had raised over $2 million after Elias's story went viral. General Vance stood beside her at the ribbon cutting. He'd be proud of this. He'd probably say it's too fancy, Imani said, but she was smiling. He'd want us to spend the money on something practical. This is practical. In the first 6 months, this facility will help over 500 veterans who are falling through the cracks, just like Elias did. The doors opened and Imani walked through. The interior was clean, welcoming, but not institutional. There were private meeting rooms where veterans could talk with counselors, a verification office where people with classified service could get their records confirmed, a job placement center, a medical clinic staffed by doctors who understood military service. And in the main lobby, a bronze plaque with Elias's photo, both of them, the young pilot in his flight suit and the older man on the street corner, the one Imani had met. Underneath, words Imani had chosen. Captain Elias J. Ward taught us that everyone deserves to be seen. This house exists to make sure no veteran ever becomes invisible again. The first people through the door that day were veterans. Some had heard about the facility through the Ward Network. Others had just seen the sign and walked in, hoping for help. One of them was a woman, maybe 50, wearing a worn jacket with a faded Marine Corps emblem. She approached Imani hesitantly. Is this real? I mean, is this actually going to help people like me? What's your situation? Imani asked gently. I served from 95 to 2005, intelligence work, a lot of it classified. I've been trying to get disability benefits for PTSD for 8 years. They keep telling me they can't verify my service, that my records are sealed. I'm about to lose my apartment. I don't know what else to do. Imani put a hand on her shoulder. We can help. That's exactly why we're here. Come on, let me introduce you to our verification team. As they walked through the building, the veteran, her name was Carmen Rodriguez, looked around with something like hope in her eyes. How did this happen? How did someone actually do something? Someone cared, Imani said simply. Then other people cared. And eventually, enough people cared that the system had to change. But who started it? A man named Elias Ward and a woman who brought him lunch. Over the next months, the Ward House helped hundreds of veterans. They verified classified service, expedited benefits, provided temporary housing, connected people with jobs. But more than that, they saw people. They listened. They treated veterans like human beings instead of problems to be processed. And the model spread. Ward houses opened in Seattle, Chicago, Miami, Los Angeles, each one funded by a mix of government support and private donations, each one staffed by people who understood what it meant to be forgotten. The Ward Network grew to over 5,000 members, veterans helping veterans, people who'd been invisible teaching others how to become visible again. Imani became the de facto face of the movement. She spoke at conferences, testified before Congress again when they needed additional funding, was interviewed by everyone from local news to 60 Minutes. But she never forgot where she came from. She still worked at County General, still took the number 12 bus, though now she could afford a car if she wanted. She kept her studio apartment, even though donations to the Ward House had given her financial security for the first time in her life. Because she needed to remember what it felt like to struggle, to be invisible, to be one paycheck from disaster. That kept her honest, kept her focused on what mattered. One morning, exactly 1 year after Elias died, Imani walked to the corner of Fillmore and 3rd. The pharmacy had been torn down, replaced by condos, but the city had installed a memorial bench on the spot where Elias used to sit. She sat down with 2 brown paper bags, one for her, one extra. A man was sleeping against the wall of the condo building, young, maybe 30, wearing army-issue boots and a jacket with desert camouflage. Imani set the extra bag beside him. "Morning," she said quietly. He woke up, looked at the bag, looked at her. "I can't pay you for this." "Didn't ask you to." "Because you matter, and someone taught me that everyone deserves kindness." She started to walk away, but his voice stopped her. "You're her, aren't you? The woman from the Ward Act, the one who helped Captain Ward." Imani turned back. "Did you know him?" "No, but I served in a similar program, classified missions, sealed records. When I came back and tried to get help, they told me I didn't exist. I've been on the street for 3 years. Then I heard about the Ward Act passing, about the new verification process. I was going to check it out. I haven't had the courage yet. What's your name? Marcus. Marcus Thompson. Well, Marcus Thompson, I know exactly where you need to go, and if you want, I'll take you there myself. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. Yeah, okay. They walked together to the ward house, and Amani thought about Elias, how one act of kindness had rippled outward, creating waves of change that touched thousands of lives. This was his legacy, not the medals or the missions, not even the law that bore his name, but this, people seeing other people refusing to let anyone be invisible, people choosing kindness when it would be easier to look away. One person at a time, one sandwich at a time, one moment of human connection at a time, until the world changed. 3 years after Elias Ward died, Imani Brooks stood in the Oval Office. It was surreal. A girl from Richmond who'd cleaned hospital toilets for $12.50 an hour was standing in the most powerful office in the world, about to receive the Presidential Citizens Medal. The president, a woman who'd been in the Senate when the Ward Act passed, approached her with the medal. Ms. Brooks, your actions exemplify the best of American values. Your courage, your compassion, and your refusal to accept injustice have changed countless lives. On behalf of a grateful nation, thank you. The medal was heavy, beautiful, completely meaningless compared to what Imani had actually gained. After the ceremony, she walked out onto the White House lawn where reporters waited. They'd asked for a statement. She looked at the cameras and thought about what Elias would say if he were here. 3 years ago, I was broke, behind on rent, working 2 jobs that didn't pay enough to survive. I was invisible to most of the world, just another Black woman struggling to get by. And then I met a man on a street corner, a man everyone else ignored, a man who'd given everything to his country and gotten nothing back. I didn't help him because I thought it would lead to this. I didn't bring him food thinking it would change policy or win medals. I did it because it was the right thing to do, because he was a human being who deserved kindness. That's it. That's the whole story. But here's what I learned. Small actions matter. The sandwich I shared, the conversation we had, the choice to see someone everyone else had decided was invisible, those small things created ripples, and ripples become waves, and waves can change the world. The Ward Act has helped over 10,000 veterans so far. The Ward houses have provided services to thousands more. The Ward Network connects people who'd been forgotten and gives them community again. That's incredible. That's meaningful. But you know what matters more? She paused, looking directly at the camera. Every single morning, someone, somewhere, chooses to see another person. They give food to someone who's hungry. They smile at someone who's lonely. They treat someone with dignity who the world has decided doesn't deserve it. That's the real legacy. Not the laws or the medals or the buildings with his name on them, but the millions of small acts of kindness happening because people learned that everyone matters. Elias Ward taught me that, and I'm teaching it to anyone who'll listen. You don't need power to make a difference. You don't need money or connections or influence. You just need to care. You just need to refuse to look away when the world tells you someone doesn't matter. So, if you're watching this, wherever you are, whatever your situation, know this: you have power. The power to see people, the power to show kindness, the power to change someone's life with something as simple as a sandwich and a conversation. Use that power, please, because the world needs more people who refuse to let anyone be invisible. Thank you. And Elias, wherever you are, thank you for trusting me with your story. Thank you for showing me what courage looks like. Thank you for being my friend." She walked away from the podium, tears streaming down her face. That night, Imani took the metro back to Richmond. She could have stayed in D.C., attended fancy dinners, networked with powerful people, but she had somewhere more important to be. She walked to Fillmore and Third, to the memorial bench where Elias used to sit. It was covered in flowers now. People left them every day, veterans, activists, regular citizens who'd been moved by the story. She sat down and opened the brown paper bag she'd brought. Half a sandwich, an apple, a bottle of water. "Hey, Elias," she said quietly. "I think we did it. I think we actually changed something. The system's not perfect, it never will be, but it's better. People are being seen who weren't before. Veterans are getting help who would have died without it. And you know what the craziest part is? None of it would have happened if you hadn't been exactly where you were, if I hadn't taken that bus route, if I hadn't been broke enough to understand what it meant to share what little I had. All these tiny coincidences that led to something bigger than either of us could have imagined. I miss you. I miss our conversations. I miss the way you'd point at planes and identify them. I miss the way you made me feel seen when everyone else looked through me. You changed my life, Elias. You made me believe that one person can make a difference." A young woman approached, maybe 25, wearing scrubs. She sat down next to Imani. "Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to say thank you. I'm a nursing student at County General. I heard your story in orientation about how you cared for Captain Ward. It inspired me to volunteer at the Ward House. I met my best friend there, another veteran who'd been homeless. She's doing amazing now. Got her benefits, got housing, got her life back. And it all started because you refused to ignore someone." Imani smiled. "What's your name?" "Sierra. Sierra Martinez." "Nice to meet you, Sierra. Can I tell you something?" "Of course." "The work you're doing, volunteering, helping other people, that matters just as much as anything I did. Maybe more. Because change doesn't come from one person. It comes from thousands of people making the choice to care, to see each other, to refuse to accept a world where anyone is invisible." "I'll remember that." Sierra walked away from the memorial, and Imani sat in the quiet of the evening. The city hummed around her. People hurried past, lost in their own lives. Some of them glanced at the memorial, read the plaque, kept walking. Others stopped, read the full story, left flowers. And somewhere in the city, someone was making the choice to help someone else, to share food they couldn't afford, to offer kindness when it would be easier to look away, to see someone everyone else had decided was invisible. Because that's what Elias taught her. And that's what she was teaching the world. One person at a time, one sandwich at a time, one moment of human connection at a time, until nobody was invisible. So, that's Imani's story. From a broke hospital janitor to a presidential medal recipient, from sharing sandwiches on a street corner to changing federal policy, all because she refused to look away from a man everyone else had decided didn't matter. Now, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment right now. Tell me, have you ever helped someone when you couldn't really afford to? Have you ever been the person who was invisible, who needed someone to see you? What's your story? And here's my challenge to you. This week, look for someone everyone else is ignoring. The homeless person on your corner, the cashier who nobody thanks, the janitor who nobody sees. Really see them, talk to them, treat them like they matter, because they do. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it inspired you to be a little more like Imani and Elias, hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Most importantly, remember this: you have power. The power to change someone's life, the power to refuse to let anyone be invisible, the power to make the world a little bit better. Use that power, please. Thanks for listening. Stay strong, stay kind, and never stop seeing each other.